I think it's pretty unanimous. 2020 sucked. It was a complete clusterfuck of viruses, fires, and socio-political upheaval in response to a centuries-old system of oppression. Lots of us have spent a lot of this year alone, and we can all feel what was left of our sanity leaving us as the second wave of coronavirus But on the bright side, we had time to watch a bunch of new movies, which I then didn't do anyway because instead I watched Stargate SG-1 and Deep Space Nine and other shows that came out long before this year instead. Did however get to watch a couple of things that came out this year, so let's go through this list of things from 2020 that I watched and or listened to in chronological order of release, and list my thoughts on them, because clearly I haven't afflicted my opinions on the world enough already. Okay, technically speaking, this movie came out in 2019, but because Canada is ass, we had to wait for 2020 for it to drop in the cineplexes. However, irritation at the delayed release date was quickly abated when I sat down in the movie theater and watched it. I already have a review of this film up on this channel, so I won't repeat myself too much, but 1917 is absolutely one of my favorite war films ever made. The story is relatively simple, but it works perfectly with Roger Deakins' cinematography and the performances put in by the two lead actors. The one-shot concept works perfectly for this film, as we're just watching two soldiers walk through no man's land trying to deliver their message. There are a lot of moments where I was on the edge of my seat, and the trench run at the end is one of the most exhilarating scenes in a movie this year. This year's been so long that I didn't even remember this was 2020. The anime of this series began in January of 2020. I actually didn't watch it to begin with, but one of my friends was watching it and told me how good it was. I promptly added the show to the list and forgot to watch it until I was on my own in Halifax, not doing much of anything else when I wasn't doing online classes. So I sat down and watched this little anime, and I quite liked it. I will admit the title sounds a little bit silly, but it is actually based on the Japanese urban legend of Hanako-Kun, the ghost of a young girl who haunts school bathrooms, waiting for people to summon her so she can, depending on the variation of the legend, haunt you or drag you to hell through the toilet. Sounds horrifying to me. However, in Hanako-Kun, Hanako is a boy and will grant you a wish if you ask him nicely, kind of. The series begins with our protagonist, Nene Yashiro, going to the bathroom to ask of Hanako to grant her a wish that the boy she likes will like him back. Hanako tries to help, kind of, with no real success, but then through a mildly bizarre series of events involving a mermaid shell, Nene is transformed into a being who turns into a fish if she comes into contact with water, and to prevent her from being dragged into the ocean to be the servant of the Queen Mermaid, or something, Hanako saves her on the condition that she will become his assistant and do whatever he says. From there, the series is sort of a monster of the week deal for a couple of episodes, as Nene and Hanako face off against the other ghosts in the school, which are here called the Seven Mysteries, while building an air of mystery not only around the realm of ghosts, but around Hanako himself. Who is he? What are his ultimate goals? And what is his equally deceased twin brother Tsukasa up to? Show's honestly pretty good. Supernatural mysteries are routinely gripping, and when they need to be, mildly horrifying. The art style is extraordinarily pretty, and just based on that, I mean, I could watch this show for ages. Look at these colors and shit. Absolutely gorgeous. The characters are also pretty entertaining. Nene is a bit of a klutz to begin with and is prone to explosions of overexcitability, but all around she has a good heart, and her interest in helping the ghosts around the school makes her a lot more compassionate character than most in the series. Hanako is an asshole, but he's a sort of asshole character whose assholishness makes him a lot more entertaining. He's always got slightly more than anyone knows up his sleeve, but still manages to come up short in any confrontation with his brother Tsukasa, who at this point in the anime we don't know a lot about, but I'm told by my friend gets up to even more shit in the manga. I'm lazy, I don't read. There's also Ko Minamoto, a kid whose older brother Teru is an exorcist, which makes for a neat little bit of conflict between those helping the ghosts and Teru who just wants them all fucked off back to whence they came. All in all, it's a pretty entertaining anime, and as of this video's release, only consists of 12 episodes as the second season hasn't dropped yet. However, when it does, I will definitely be watching, and I do highly recommend it. I fairly routinely state that director's cuts are always the best version of a movie that can possibly exist, and that every director ought to have final cut rights in any movie they make. However, studios suck, and they like to mess about with things, and the theatrical cut of Dr. Sleep is no exception. I remember watching it in theaters and liking it, but not quite clicking with it on some level. Some things didn't quite work, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and then the announcement came late 2019 that a 3-hour director's cut of the film was coming, and I was immediately intrigued. So when it came out, I watched it, and it is a much better film. The thing that had been missing from the theatrical cut was a lot of nuance. The extra half hour in the director's cut is less than of an addition of some new scenes, but mostly an expansion of the scenes already in the film, and it goes a long way to flesh out the characters of Danny Torrance, Abra Stone, and the wonderfully evil Rose the Hat. The trauma Danny and Wendy received in The Shining gets a lot more time in this cut too, which not only makes Danny feel like a more round character, but actually makes the finale at the Overlook Hotel feel a lot more earned than it does in the theatrical cut, where it felt more tacked on than anything else. There's a particularly heartbreaking detail in this longer cut that Danny used The Shining planning to change the color of his eyes, because when Wendy looked at him, all she could see in his eyes was Jack. Rose's motivations are a lot more fleshed out also. In the theatrical cut, the ghost of Dick Halloran has the throwaway line about how Rose will either kill Abra, turn her, or keep her for a long time, and that would be worst of all. But in the director's cut, there's a scene where we actually see Rose have this thought of keeping Abra alive for years, torturing her until she dies to get every ounce of the shining, or as Rose call it, the steam, out of her. It's a horrifying moment, and serves to add to how absolutely morally corrupt Rose and the True Knot really are. It makes them scarier, and therefore even more effective villains than they were in the theatrical cut. Ultimately, the director's cut is, in my mind, the definitive version of this film, and the theatrical cut looks like a chop-up job in comparison now. To those who are yet to see Dr. Sleep, I cannot recommend watching the director's cut enough. It might be 3 hours long, but it's worth every minute of it. I remember seeing trailers for this movie and thinking it looked fun, but then ended up not seeing it in theaters due to being a cashless university student at the time. So I waited, then I ended up forgetting about it until I watched it on the plane to Vancouver back in June, and I loved it immediately. Guy Ritchie as a director I only really knew elsewhere from his Sherlock Holmes films, which are if nothing else highly entertaining films filled with great dialogue and inventive approaches to otherwise fairly standard action sequences. But if this film is anything to go off, I have a lot of catching up to do in regards to his other movies, because his movie is mad entertaining. Ritchie's directing style isn't as flashy as it is in the Sherlock Holmes films here, but it's still pretty stylized in a way that just makes the movie a lot of fun to watch. It's a little self-indulgent at times, such as the moments where Hugh Grant starts telling the main story of the film and the film cuts to a shot of a film projector as if to underline the point, but for the most part, Ritchie's tongue-in-cheek humor adds an extra level to the film. The dialogue is routinely some of the best parts in the movie. When I was watching it for the first time, it was all I could do to keep myself from laughing out loud, as I imagine that would have been a bit distracting to the others on the plane at the time. All of the characters are constantly bouncing off each other with one-liners and extreme sarcasm, but it never wears on the viewer because of how well written it is. And of course, the cast of this movie is stacked. My personal favorites in this movie are Hugh Grant as an incredibly greasy Fletcher, a reporter whose only ethical ground is what he thinks is going to make him a quick buck, Colin Farrell as the extremely Irish coach, and Charlie Hunnam as Raymond, Matthew McConaughey's mostly calm but permanently irritated right-hand man. These three get the majority of the best lines in the movie, but their performances are also absolutely top-notch. All in all, this movie is quite insanely British, but it's also extremely entertaining and definitely something that can be watched many times without losing any of its humor value. I can attest to that. I've seen this movie quite a few times now. Definitely do yourself the solid and check it out. My thoughts on this song are already up and out there for everybody to see, so once again I'll keep this one a bit briefer. Given that this is the only crumb of James Bond content we got this year after the movie was delayed 3 times, thank you COVID-19, couldn't have done it without you, I latched on this song pretty quickly. As I stated in my video about this song and all the James Bond songs, this is one of my favorite Bond songs ever. It's a little on the softer side, which is a welcome change of pace after the bombast of Skyfall, which is my favorite James Bond song by the way, and whatever the fuck Writings on the Wall was. It was also the song that made me go, alright, screw it, I like Billie Eilish now. I didn't listen to a lot of her stuff because everyone was ranting about how great she was, and that made a childish part of my brain go, well, now I'm not listening to her now. But yeah, I reckon she's pretty okay, and I've ended up liking a couple of her other tracks since. All in all, a good track, and I can't wait to hear it in a movie theater, assuming we ever get out of this hell world. If we're being absolutely truthful, Sonic the Hedgehog as a movie isn't really anything special, but it is entertaining and I had fun watching it, so it's okay. My review for it after watching it is linked above if you want to watch it, so here I'll try to keep it down to the basics. This movie is everything a Sonic movie needed to be. Sonic is a charming character, brought to life by Ben Schwartz's voice acting really well. A lot of these CGI creature main characters tend to be cringe city, but I actually really like Sonic as a character here. They didn't try to do anything groundbreaking as character development, and honestly, that's a good thing. The human characters are for the most part less good, most of them either being pretty flat, having only the barest of character development, or just being there for a jerk that was maybe funny for a couple of seconds but quickly lost its appeal. Robotnik is something of an exception to this, but only if you like Jim Carrey. If you don't, you're not gonna have a good time. The plot is pretty bare bones. I think I'd predicted most of what happens in the movie by about the 5-minute point, but it still succeeds in being a fun ride. Ultimately, this movie is pretty by the books and formulaic, but if you like Sonic, you'll like this movie. And I like Sonic, so I like this movie. This is a little EP by independent producer FrankJavCee, who I've been listening to since high school. FrankJavCee is actually one of my bigger inspirations in my own music work, and I've learned a lot from him on his videos about different music genres, even if they were mostly supposed to be satire, I think. However, his music can also be pretty sincere, and this EP he released in May is excellent proof of that. It's a bit different from his usual sort of synth-filled sounds, this time heading more towards an indie rock sound, but it's still got a lot of his chill sensibilities baked into it, making for a great record to sit and relax to. The guitars in this album are all at once driving and chilled out, moving the track along and kind of washing you along with them. It's not the sound I immediately expected when I pressed play, but I can't wait to hear more like this from him soon. The title track is probably the standout track here, but the whole EP is really solid and I recommend to everybody to give this one a listen. It's good shit. Those who've been watching my channel for a while will definitely recognize this track. I've been using it in my intro since the 4th episode of my series of reviews of the first season of Titans, and the original track from which it was created appeared first in the previous video as an outro music, and it's a track that has technically existed since 2017. The original track, 11:40 PM, is a track that my brother Declan and I wrote for our first album for our electronic project In Virtual Skies, and of the tracks on that album, it's still probably one of my favorites, as it has a kind of melancholic atmosphere that I really like. However, on the tail end of 2017, I was listening to a lot of sort of synthwave and vaporwave stuff, particularly the wonderful Resonance by Home. All of this made me want to try out the genre for myself, which had mixed results, but ended in 2 tracks I was really proud of. A vaporwave track based on a sample from a London Beat song, and this remix of 11:40 PM. After finishing it, I promptly forgot to release it, but then this May I realized I probably should and put it out on streaming services for all to hear. Still pretty fond of it, and I will continue to use it as a sort of theme track to this channel, because old habits die hard, I guess. Much like many others, I was pleasantly surprised when Taylor Swift got onto Twitter and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm releasing an album tomorrow, hope y'all like it." Having only relatively recently become an admirer of her work, I was pretty amped up, and when Folklore dropped, I listened to it immediately on the ride home from work, and I was amazed. Most people probably know Taylor for a country rock hit Love Story or her pop hits like Shake It Off and things like that. And it's true that she's been heading more in a pop direction since 2014 with a lot of tracks to dance to. However, Folklore marks something of an about face, going from danceable pop to something a lot more quiet and introspective. And honestly, I love it. Folklore is a really delicate album in places, relying a lot more on softened piano sounds and occasionally Taylor's more country-based roots. Most of the songs take on the form of sketches of characters and little stories, as if Taylor wanted to say to everyone who accused her of only writing songs about breakups, "Oh, fucking bet, just watch this then." Taylor, being increasingly sick of what anyone has to say about her, is also pretty wonderful, to be honest. Her voice floats above the instrumentation of this album, and to my ears, it's the best she's sounded ever. I could probably wax lyrical about this album for a while, but in the interest of keeping this briefer for this video, I'll have to distill my thoughts down to this. Each track has its own personality, from the heartbreak of Cardigan, to the almost M83-like grandeur of Epiphany, to the country track Betty, to the dream pop Mirrorball, personal favorite of mine. It's just such a solid album, and I continue to listen to tracks over and over again, and I doubt that's gonna change anytime soon. It is no secret to anybody on this planet that I am a simp for Christopher Nolan's films. I have told anybody who will listen, and a lot of people who won't, that Interstellar is my favorite film of all time, and The Prestige and The Dark Knight are among some of my other favorites. An honorable mention also goes to Memento, because holy shit, Memento. So when Tenet finally dropped in theaters in Canada, my ass was in the seat opening night to sit and watch and enjoy Nolan's time-inverted spy thriller, and I loved every minute of it. A lot of people have accused this film of being too complicated, but I just don't see that at all. The plot of the film is actually really simple, sticking more or less to the formula of a James Bond film, forever answering the question, how would Nolan do a spy movie? Once you apply the skeleton of a spy movie to Tenet, it becomes super easy to digest, and before you know it, you're being swept along for the ride. Sure, some of the specifics of time inversion can be a little tricky at times, but they're usually pretty easily sussed out once things get moving and everything falls into place. In terms of direction, Nolan has outclassed himself yet again, even shattering the long-held criticism that he doesn't know how to direct fight scenes. Nolan's fight scenes have been pretty clunky in the past. Look no further than disaster that is the fight scene at the end of The Dark Knight Rises, but here in Tenet, he's learned from that, and this film has some fight scenes that are not only better than anything he's done, but are some of the best ever, full stop. I have watched the fight in the kitchen over and over, because while being short, it's incredibly choreographed, shot, and edited, and this is all well in part to Hoyt van Hoyteman's cinematography and Jennifer Lame's editing. On the topic of van Hoyteman's cinematography, the film looks incredible. Nolan's films have always looked good, but for my money, Van Hoyteman is a far better match for him in terms of directing large-scale pictures than Wally Pfister was. The film is shot in a mix of 65mm film and IMAX, and as a result, every shot looks perfectly clean and crisp. I could and really want to go on for longer about this movie, but there's so much I want to say that most of it will have to be put in its own video. Suffice it to say, this is my favorite film of this year, and I will be watching it again many times in the future. Had it not been for Anya Taylor-Joy, I probably wouldn't have watched this series. Whilst I like the concept of chess, I wasn't sure how gripping a series it would make. But I'm glad I did, because this is the best Netflix series I've ever seen. Also, I did see somewhere that someone once referred to it as just a shonen anime, but for live action, and my life has not known peace since I heard that. The Queen's Gambit tells the story of Beth Harmon, a chess prodigy who rises to fame at a young age, and the battle she has with her mental health as a result of the instant fame and the addiction to narcotics she picks up due to mistreatment in the orphanage she lived in as a child. Already based on that, my attention was hooked. If there's anything that's like cocaine to me in TV and movies, it's the trope of the troubled genius who's also a little bit cocky. See Sherlock Holmes, House, Monk, and the Doctor from Doctor Who to some extent. And Beth Harmon fills that trope to a T. She's intelligent, routinely whipping the asses of people far older than her and more experienced in the game than she is. She's also quite cocky at times, which leads to some of my favorite lines in the series.
I thought you were done for. I should have known better.
Yes, you should have.
Taylor-Joy's performance in the role is captivating, and I'm pretty sure it's the best performance she's ever turned in. All in all, she's a super compelling character. It really hurts to watch her spiral as the series goes, falling towards what seems like inevitable oblivion. By this point in the series, I was preparing to be emotionally crushed, as stories of tortured geniuses like to end in horrible tragedy. But I was surprised and elated when the show decided to turn that on its head, showing Beth instead conquer her demons and get off the narcotics she'd been taking her whole life, defeating the Russian Grandmaster Borgov completely sober in a match that was beautifully triumphant. I may have cried a little bit. The show also excels at making each match Beth plays gripping. As I said earlier, watching people play chess doesn't sound like something that would be too exciting, but it is, because the show perfectly displays what's going on in Beth's mind as she plays every move, and keeps each match moving at a brisk pace to keep the viewer from getting bored. The cinematography of this series is also fantastic. So many Netflix originals look like total ass, but this one uses color and composition beautifully to really place the viewer back in the 60s, making it so much more compelling a watch. At the end of the day, I cannot recommend this series enough. When I watched it, I told all my friends who would listen, and a lot of them who wouldn't, to watch it immediately, and that advice stands for anybody who has not yet seen it. Please do yourself that favor. Yeah, this is pretty much just self-promotion, but I unironically really love this track, so here we go. I wrote this track for an album I'm working on pretty slowly, admittedly, and so far it's my favorite thing I've written for it. It's based on a dream I once had, hence the title, a dream where I felt more at peace than I'd ever felt in my life. It's also one of the first tracks that I've released that I didn't have violent artist guilt about when I released it. Most of the time I have this period of time after releasing something where I violently hate it, but not this time. I'm still really proud of this track, and it's so far one of the best reviewed tracks I've ever released. Someone I knew hit me up when it dropped to tell me that it was hauntingly beautiful, and that comment has lived rent-free in my head ever since. So yeah, check it out and let me know what you think. Getting 2 surprise Taylor Swift albums in one year was definitely not something I was expecting, but I was pretty darn happy about it because Evermore, like its predecessor, is pretty flippin' amazing. This review will be a bit shorter than the folklore review because for the most part, same goes here. But in Evermore's case, there are some key differences that make it noteworthy. For starts, it sounds a lot more confident than folklore did, as if Taylor has well and truly settled into this new sound and is a lot more comfortable working within it. As a result, it is in places even more beautiful than folklore, and Taylor's voice is as wonderful here as ever. This album also delivers a bit more of an emotional punch than folklore in places too. I'm quite sure that I cried listening to the title track on my first listen, and songs like Tolerate It and Coney Island are tearjerkers too. There's also a heartfelt tribute to Taylor's grandmother here too, and that's also just lovely. For me, the standout tracks on this album are Willow, Tolerate It, Dorothea, Coney Island, and the title track. Like folklore before it, I recommend it to anyone who either likes Taylor Swift or quieter music. A beautiful pair of albums. Here's the thing about Wonder Woman 1984. Everybody's good in it, especially Pedro Pascal's Maxwell Lord. It's directed pretty well. It's got some neat action scenes in it. There are some beautiful shots in it. However, the screenplay is kind of shit. Not much of anything that happens in this movie makes a lot of sense. The Dreamstone as a concept is fine, and I do like the concept that when your wish is granted, it takes something away from you. But a lot of what it does is kind of arbitrary or straight up horrifying. When Diana wishes that Steve was back, he's reincarnated in some random guy's body, and nobody in the film has a problem with this at all. Not even Diana, who as far as I know, her character would be absolutely horrified by the idea that getting Steve back came at the cost of some poor fucker that was just walking to work one day.
Well, shit, Diana!
Now I will preface this next bit by saying that I like Patty Jenkins as a director. I think her Wonder Woman movies are very well made, and I think she's a much better character director than some of her counterparts in the DCEU, which serves Wonder Woman very well. However, it seems to me she has a bit of a third act problem where her movies fall apart. It was this way in the first Wonder Woman movie, and it's kind of the same here. The whole finale involving the TV network makes less than no sense. For starts, the movie pulls the concept of the worldwide TV network right out of its ass, just so the threat could become a global one. And then it tries to claim that the particles used by this network touch everybody, and that's the same as Maxwell Lord having to touch people to be able to grant their wishes, which is a metric ton of bullshit. But the screenplay runs with it anyway. And there are some neat moments within this frame to show how horrifying this device of instant wish fulfillment is, such as a moment where a man wishes someone would drop dead, and then she does, but cool moments alone do not a movie make. Now, all that said, I did have fun watching this movie, because it is a fun movie, but unfortunately, the moment you think about it for longer than 2 seconds, it falls apart, and that's kind of a shame. I'm fairly confident that if this screenplay had gone through at least one more revision, it could have been really good, but instead it kind of falls on its face. So yeah, that's the stuff from 2020 I wanted to talk about. There isn't as much as there was last year on account of not as much happening this year as we'd all hope, but hopefully next year, well, makes up for it. I'll be back with a couple more videos soon, including some reviews on the movies I mentioned in this slot, and and the next in my series of Zack Snyder movie reviews. By the way, my Man of Steel video has been picking up views faster than anything else I posted, so thank you all for that. If you do want more, do all those things that all YouTubers tell you to do, like liking, subscribing, clicking that little bell, and all that shit. Anyway, see you next time.